what else do we know? Away from the politics, we are waking up to the news that Kenya has the first gold in the 100 meters in the Commonwealth. At least it's a breath of fresh air away from all the politics. Ferdinand Omanyala, 10.02 seconds to win the first gold that we have had in the Commonwealth, and also in the 100 meters in the Commonwealth ever. He has indeed made history. It's away from the politics, something we are also embracing and happy about. But let's get back to politics and election preparedness. And now, joining me, I have a panel of experts here to try and put things into perspective, because a lot is currently happening when we talk about politics in the country. On my immediate right, we have, it's not a new face here, he's an advocate of the High Court and is also a governance expert, Wambui Shadrack. Karibu sana, Council.
Thank you, Ben. It's always a pleasure to be here. Yes, I'm looking forward to the discussion.
And the election as well.
Yes,
okay.
yes.
And on my extreme right, we have Willy Kamau.
Yes, yes.
Willy Kamau is also a political and governance expert, and also will be joined, I'm hoping we're joined by another lawyer and also a political analyst we have ever had here. That is Gibson, Gisore, a little bit later. But away from that, first things first, everything is ready according to IEBC. All the ballot papers are here. It's just the logistical, the logistics they're doing to ensure that the polls are credible, fair, and each and every day, beginning Monday, they are assuring Kenyans that all is set. 4 days to the general election.
Yes, Ben. Perhaps even before I dive straight into the topic of discussion, I must join Kenyans and people of goodwill in congratulating Omanyala for that success and the win for Kenya.
Yes.
That goal means everything to us. It's the second from the year 1962 or something or thereabout. So it's a good thing for Kenya, and we are hoping that this should be a demonstration of the winning ways that we have as a country. Mm-hmm. Now, diving straight to the issue, the election preparedness, of course, with a focus on the IEBC. Mm-hmm. I begin first by highlighting that the Supreme Court in the year 2017, through the leadership of Emeritus David Kenani Maraga, told us that election in itself is a process. It is not an event. So that when you want to look at election preparedness, we do not want to focus really on what has been mentioned by the IEBC chair. But as far as they are concerned, they are ready and prepared to do the elections come the 9th day of August, next week on Tuesday. So really, mine will be a wider analysis of perhaps what we will be calling the election preparedness as far as the IEBC is concerned. But give it to them. Of course, they have had their misses and hits, but one thing is for sure is that they have tried. They have tried to comply with the timelines that are set in law. The only challenge, and perhaps what might be a hindrance to the free and fair election, as far as other people are concerned, because free and fair is largely a subjective question. Because what might be free and fair to you might not really be free and fair to us.
Yes.
But if we subject it to an objective scale, any man or any woman who is walking in our streets here in Nairobi, can they say these elections will be free and fair? As we speak right now, there are a number of cases that are still pending in the High Court. There are a number of issues that are still pending in courts that touch on the elections that we hope to participate on the 9th day of August. So, to that extent, there has been questions. I have seen one, and I will be participating fully in it, where issues about integrity has been raised.
Yes.
A number of candidates.
Yes.
A number of candidates who are participating either as members of parliament or governors, or even the deputy president of this country, one of the deputy presidents, hopefuls in this country. So that is still a pending question, which touches on the credibility of the election come the 9th day of August. So that in a sense is something else that we should be focused on. As we know of it, Reuben Kigame, received a judgment from learned Justice Anthony Mrima that directed the IEBC to include his name as among the presidential hopefuls that we have in this country. But soon thereafter, we saw the IEBC file an appeal. before the Supreme, the Court of Appeal, and there is a stay to that to that decision that was made by Justice Anthony Mrima. So the question that probably you will be asking yourself, and of course the citizens sitting at home might be asking themselves, so what becomes of the fate of Reuben Kigame?
Yeah, and again, because of course we are also expecting Mugure and Dande, the learned judge, is also having the same thing.
Yes.
We will be touching on that because at the end of the day, Reuben Kigame, after the elections, can go to court to challenge that, right? But we will be looking at that because we still have the Court of Appeal and also the Apex Court. But let's hear 4 days.
Yes.
To the general election, IEBC, beginning Monday, they say that they will be ensuring that they have a presser each and every day to assure Kenyans that all is set and done. Okay. And the latest one, being yesterday, is that all the ballot papers are here, and it's just the distribution and a few challenges here and there because of the internet, which they say that they are adequately looking into. 4 days to the national polls.
Okay. First, I would also like to take this opportunity and congratulate Omanyara for putting the nation at the world map. He has done us an honor. That's an honor. Some things you can only credit them as honor. He has done us a great honor, and so God bless him. I want to believe and assume that Wafula Chebukati, being the chairman of the IEBC, having been the only chairperson to oversee 2 elections, I want to believe he has used all the experience he has had before to make sure that we have a credible, smooth election. He has had 5 years to prepare himself and his institution to make sure that we do not have a case like the one of 2017 where the High Court, or rather the Supreme Court, nullified the whole election. It was not on matters rigging. It was on matters irregularities and illegalities. You know, when someone says that you can steal an election, you need to tell the aspirants or the politicians and the voters which key places to look out for. How do you steal an election? It is next to impossible to rig an election because you would pin out the key areas that you need to look out when we are going through the process of an election. And so I want to believe that the IBC is ready. And it has perfected that, having Wafula Chebukati been there now for the 2nd time in a row. And I want to believe that this time is going to be as smooth as possible. So without a shadow of doubt, I want to believe we are ready. Actually, as I was coming here this morning, I heard that IBC has dispatched 35 the ballots, the election ballots to 35 counties. So meaning they are yet to finish about seven,
about 7 and the presidential
exactly. So that is a sign of well preparedness. You know, 4 days to election and having done that to 35 counties, I think that let's always not be negative about our nation and their institution. So far so good. There's nothing to worry about. I can say that he has shown preparedness, and I want to assure Kenyans, I have been on the ballot for 2 times. I've ran my own election for 2 times, first as an MCA and second as an MP. And I want to tell Kenyans that there is nothing as hard as stealing an election. It is almost impossible. You know,
actually, Kamau, we always have issues in terms of transmission of results and other. It's not exactly the stealing of the election.
Yes, because you should point out and say this is the part to watch out for. There are your agents there in the polling station that are your eyes and ears. You have given them proper training, and so they need to tell you this did not go well, that did not go well. And so that is why when in 2017 when Maraga was nullifying the election, he did not say it was rigged. He did so on the accounts of irregularities and irregularities. And I want to believe that Wafula Chebukati has now perfected the art so that we don't have a repeat scenario of what happened in 2017.
Indeed. And Council, something that you mentioned has hit the headlines. Actually, if you look at the Kenyan dailies, they are all talking about that. A question of integrity. The question of integrity. And to be specific, they're talking about chapter 6. They want an interpretation on constitutional interpretation on chapter 6, because a lot of politicians, the IEBC, first of all, the EACC had raised the red flag, talked about these people this is the list, these people should not be at the ballot. But IBC talked about, no, unless their cases are concluded in court, including the pending appeals. Case in point is the Waluke case, who was convicted and had to spend some time at committee before he made his appeal. He's out, and he is still at the ballot. He's not the only one. They are talking about the Kenya Kwanza running mate. I've talked about Aisha Jumwa. They have mentioned a number of politicians. So question is, the constitutional interpretation in court at the moment, just 4 days to the general poll. And of course, we have 2 lawyers, or 3 lawyers? Have 2 advocates of the High Court between 2 lawyers. All right. We have Wambui Shadrack, who is an advocate of the High Court. We have Willy, Kamau, who is a governance expert. And now we have Gibson Gisore, who is also an advocate of the High Court. Gibson, karibu sana.
Asante sana.
Yeah, unfortunately, you've just arrived and we're going to throw you straight into the deep end. Okay, let me start with you, Counsel.
Yes.
There are so many petitions and cases pending in court, but I think the ones with the most interest, first is the question of the constitutional interpretation of Chapter 6 in regards to some of the aspirants or candidates, because they have all been cleared, who are contesting in the coming election. And also we have the Ruben Kigame. I begin with, we should begin with the integrity one, then we look at the Ruben Kigame case.
Yes, now, first I must highlight one thing. I believe my co-panelist here, my good friend here, who is very good at governance, have mentioned of elections and stealing and rigging of elections. There is a text that perhaps even our readers should try and look at. Nick Chisman and Brian Klass, they have written a text on how to rig elections.
Okay, Counsel, apologies. Just a minute, we have to check your sound. Perhaps I am privileged to have 2 lawyers. So perhaps I will first of all engage Gisore as we work out your audio. We are having candidates who have pending cases in court, and now somebody has gone to court, and Mogore Dande has been tasked with having to listen to that case in regards to the interpretation of integrity as enshrined in Chapter 6 of the Constitution. EACC had also raised the same flag, a red flag, in regards to candidates who have pending cases, some murder.
Yes, Troy, we are at a very interesting juncture where we are testing the strength of our Constitution. Our Constitution is strong enough, but there are other enabling laws which are supposed to enforce the Constitution. And I think that's where the challenge lies. The issue with now where we have to have Mugure Tande come clean or try to explain the status of what is exactly our Chapter 6 talking about is a situation we shouldn't find ourselves in. It's because of situations or institutions and circumstances which have one thing has led to another, and we have found ourselves here. That is where we need a very clear interpretation. What it is that we expect out of Chapter 6. Is it just there for the sake? Because everybody else we expect not to be running seems to be clear to run. The other excuse is about the other issue is the constitutional interpretation in regards to constitutional principles of justice and fairness. You see, somebody must have gone through the process successfully to the very end to ensure that he's allowed a fair chance to defend himself to the very end. So some of these cases, give it what I call them, whatever it is you can call them, some of these people have realized there's a loophole that you can actually be persistently be in court. However much that you've been found to have committed a crime here, you can still appeal. You can still even finish the Kenyan jurisdiction, still go to the East African court, and still say, I still have a case pending. So some of these are techniques which people are coming up with, and I think the enforcing law or the laws which Parliament is supposed to pass should actually be able to come clean and say that at what point does litigation come to an end,
yes,
so that we can actually have give life to Chapter 6.
Because looking at any constitutional interpretation, looking at a case example of former Nairobi Governor Mike Sonko, he has exhausted all the Kenyan courts. He has now appealed at the East African Court.
Yes.
He's not done with his appeals. So does that mean that perhaps he could still be at the ballot pending that? Because if we are going to be waiting for all the constitutional interpretation and anybody or everybody to exhaust all the legal framework, then we could find ourselves in such a case.
Yeah, I think for the case of Mike Sonko, he's just trying to vindicate himself and to hold the funds
because of the
expectations of the funds.
Yes.
Yes, but I think his chances of succeeding are slim. From where I stand, that's my opinion. But then you can't stop him from going wherever he wants to be given audience. If he has audience at the East African Court, let him get it. Even Martha Karua did that to the Supreme Court and still went to the East African Court. It found in favor of her, while the other courts had failed. So still it's a court, and it's a court which we as a country we are party to, so we cannot stop people from going there.
All right, we're going to get back to the courts because there are so many petitions and so many things that we're supposed to hear. But Kamau, let me bring you in on what IEBC has just said. 18,000 election observers. We are having 16,000 candidates. So even Chebukati, it was a light moment. He's talking about we have even more election observers than we have those candidates who are seeking election posts. And looking at all the observers, 18,000, they are even more than all the candidates who are contesting, just to show how IEBC is keen to ensure that this election is free and fair. And it's a good thing that you brought about the issue of election stealing in Kenya, because it's not when we are casting the ballot, when we are transmitting the result, it's where the issue basically has cropped up. And my two advocates here can attest to me that the cases in court were not exactly in the casting of the ballot in 2017, but more or less in the relaying and tabulation of those results. Your take?
First, Troy, allow me just to throw a thought on what you had previously asked my friend here. Matters, courts and elections. You see, election is a process. It's not a one-day event. And there are so many stakeholders that are involved. Now the problem is that all these stakeholders involved are not in sync in this country. One of the things we have realized is that there is now that tug of war. Who calls the shots? Who wears the pants in the election, in the election process? Someone like Mike Sonko is, at one point he's not cleared, he rushes to the court, he's cleared, then he's on the ballot, then he rushes somewhere, he's not cleared. You come to Kiambu, where there's a senatorial candidate who was not cleared, matters, corruption. Then he rushes to court, the court says you cannot be cleared, he goes to high court, and then he's cleared, now he's in the ballot. It was actually rumored that the ballot paper, by the time it was being cleared, were already printed. So we don't even know how that is going to play out. Anyway, let's come back. You see, an observer, what's the work of an observer in an election? It is to observe, not to talk, not to comment, not to give advice, whether you are a lawyer or what you are. It's just to observe and write report, just in case of any dispute. Okay, these are now the reports from the observers that now the court rely on to make their ruling and their judgment. And it is actually advised, we've spoken about civic education. An observer should not even give an advice if they see anything going wrong. It is not for them to speak and say, doesn't your law say this? No, that is not their work. Also, it is not the work of agents or the POs or anybody in the polling station to confront an observer, telling him, no. Their work is to observe and write a report, because in case of any dispute, those are some of the things that are looked into by them. And having come from an election that had a lot of bone of contention with the issues of irregularities and irregularities, those reports will be relied on, because I want to believe we will have so many court cases right now moving forward after 9. You will say, oh, this guy Gibson Njue did what, this one did do what. And so when we have these people in every polling station taking their observations and writing their reports, it is very crucial. But and again, it is very good for the observer to make sure that every process they are involved, from the tallying, from the casting of votes to the opening of ballots to the sealing of the ballot. They need to write a report. So just in case of any dispute, then there is a report that can be relied on.
All right.
Yes.
And it's a good thing that you've clearly outlined what their role is to observe and to write a good report on the same. But gentlemen,
not a good report. What they saw, just an accurate, true report.
Okay. And on that observation, let's observe 2 minutes or 3 minutes of a break. It's already 11, gentlemen, but let's have that break, then we'll come back. Of course, we'll be sampling some of your comments and responses when we come back. Welcome back. This is KBC News Check, and we are just 4 days away from the general election. We are taking a keen eye on all the stakeholders. IEBC has said that all is set and is actually meeting observers and other stakeholders at the Bomas of Kenya. We are keeping a keen eye on that. Of course, we're also keeping a keen eye on Kenya Kwanza. They announced that they are going to be having a press conference more or less on the election preparedness, and the gentleman in studio with me are trying to put things into perspective. Also, when you talk about the observers, it's a matter of how credible that election is. 18,000, many observers, and international as well. Council, what is your take on the same? 18,000 against we've always had issues when it comes to election transmission. Now we have the largest number of election observers that Kenya has ever had.
Troy, as I was telling you before, when Nick Chisman and Brian Klass were writing their article, they have penned down a very good article that forms a very good read on how to rig elections, which has analyzed some of our democracies in this country, including Kenya, on our few elections that we have had them, we have stolen our own elections, and we have had people assigned to higher offices through dubious means and not democratic means. So one of the ways of how to rig an elections is, number one, interfering with the independence of election observers, and number two, limiting or rather having none or little election observers. So when you have as we have been told by the IEBC that we are having observers who are almost twice the number of aspirants or candidates that we have, I think it's a good show of our democracy. And ultimately, when you look at the elections are conducted under certain set principles in the Constitution. If you read Article 81 and Article 86, it tells us that what will form a credible election. This is an election that is free, fair, it is transparent. So when we have observers during an election, all it does, it ensures that we promote transparency in the election process. So that there are ultimately what we will be having is an election process that people can give credibility. We have election observers that can tell us that this was done, we were there, and we are satisfied with the outcome. Remember, even one of the means, one other way of rigging an election is ensuring that we glorify the outcome rather than the process. And if you were to recall what transpired in the year 2017, the Supreme Court judges, what they told us is the process is as important as the outcome.
All right. Just a minute. And we are going also to be looking at the courts as well, because you guys will be quite busy after next week, I'm quite sure, because a lot of election petitions, we are expecting a lot of election petitions. But back to you, Gibson. There's a discussion that just refuses to go, and the cabinet secretary for ICT, Joe Mushau, cleared it yesterday and he said that the government will not at all switch off any form of communication, because Kenyans have the right to information as enshrined in the constitution. But it's a discussion that has refused to go. We have seen, and even ELOG talked about, there's a lot of propaganda that could be detrimental to a free and fair, credible election. Because at the end of the day, a fair election is not just only on the casting and the counting of the votes. Gibson.
Yes, Troy, I think first I need to commend Musheru and the government itself, because for a moment, I thought we could head there. But as we stand, our own government has come out clean that we're not going to tamper with social media. Let Kenyans do what they have been doing consistently. Election is just a day's thing. It's a process, and we shouldn't be shocked that we are going to vote so that we switch off things. We can't panic. That's a sign of panicking. We have seen, for example, in Uganda, when they were doing elections, internet was switched off. In DRC, the same thing. In Ethiopia, the same thing. So we are living in a community where we have people or governments which do not trust their own people during elections. Or they want to hide something from their own people which they can't manage. So they don't have trust in their own people so that they can be able to shut their internet. So for our government to come out clean and say that we're not shutting, it shows how mature a democracy we are, how much the government believes in liberties, because social media is now a constitution of liberty. Look at it from whichever way, but now it's part and parcel of life, because it's a way of communication, it's a way of people expressing themselves so that you know what is happening where. So that if you piece these things together, you can actually be able, it's also a kind of an observer process on the side. So that is very important. I'm
going to give you a chance as well, but still on the same, where can the government, or at what point can the government intervene? And what laws can they use to say what we have seen now is too much? We really need to regulate. Because he said, no, we are not touching. But at the end of the day, if you see Uganda, DRC, all those countries, there's a point that social media propaganda got so that the government can get to that decision.
I don't know, if we go back to what Musheru said, when I think one of the commissioners of one independent body, what is the name? He tried to say that, it might get there. I think the Cohesion Commission.
Yes.
Musheru on Twitter wrote, I don't know which framework we're going to use. Because for him, as the ICT minister, he doesn't know any framework which can lead to Kenya shutting its internet. So it means he's a strong supporter of social media. Having worked at Google and having been exposed internationally, I think we cannot think any less of him because now he stood to his grounds. Sometimes they could have used an excuse. These other governments use an excuse to just shut the internet. Even the people who are on internet in these other countries are not as many as in Kenya. So internet is well established in Kenya. It's actually one of the fastest in the world. So it has become part and parcel of the life of Kenya. So when you shut it off, there's a lot of other things which are going to go wrong on that particular day, because it's not all about elections. There are other things, people doing marketing, selling their things. If you shut it, then what happens?
Wakili, perhaps you can also dig in that.
Yes. I join my colleague in, of course, appreciating the place of technology, especially internet in our current constitutional dispensation. Internet in itself is also an economic enabler, so that we have people who are trading on that internet. And if you interfere with the internet, of course, without any lawful justification, then it means you are also limiting chances of people gaining economically. And the government essentially is there so that it can promote you and me so that we can gain economically. The government is not there to provide employment for us all. No, it's just there to promote an environment where all of us can be thriving, and the internet could be one. So on the question on the National Cohesion Integration Commission, the NCIC, threatening that they will of course try and shut down the internet or liaise with the Ministry of the ICT to shut down the internet. I think this is just foolhardy. It is just, it's just nonsensical. Because, number one, there is no ground to it. Secondly, if at all we have a fear, which could be legitimate if you ask me, that we will be having a lot of spread of propaganda, we'll be having a lot of insightful sentiments. We have seen our politicians now have turned themselves into what we call they are inciting people so that they can have an economical, a political advantage. When you hear people saying that you've heard them previously, making reference to other tribes as being minorities and all that. So the government, the law is not without a recourse. The law has solutions to that. And that is why we have the office of the DPP. The DPP is supposed to act in committee with the NCIC so that we can detect. And the NCIC is well equipped with the police officers from the National Police Service. It has DCI officials or officers. And our current DCI is very competent. We have seen just recently a lab was launched at Kiambu, the headquarters Mazingira building. And that lab is one of a kind. We nowadays do not have to send our samples to South Africa or any other country. No, we are well equipped. We are able to detect an offense, we are able to prevent and even avert a possible violation of other people's rights. So to that extent, I think such sentiments by the NCIC are just idle statements. They are made, of course, being ignorant of the different avenues that they have in law. The NCIC has been very indolent, and they have not been consequential in terms of discharging their mandate is concerned. You do not see them doing anything other than those press conferences that they hold there at their offices. So what I think should be done, because we are also here to propose some solutions. I think the NCIC should just revisit their mandate. They should liaise properly with the office of the DPP. Let us, if you identify, if my colleagues here have posted things that are hateful, they are insightful, things that are likely to spread propaganda, because the freedom of expression is limited in law. It does not include the spread of propaganda and insightful statements. So you can be prosecuted in a competent court of law. So you cannot, in all sincerity, you cannot shut down the internet, basically because you feel uncomfortable that Ben has used the internet to propagate insightful statements, to spread propaganda. No, that is just ignoring the avenues that we have in law. So we, as a country, we have never run short of laws that can help us. The only problem is faithfulness. We are not faithful at, looking at the law. We are sometimes we even ignorant of the laws that govern us. Yes.
Maybe.
Yes.
On what Wakili has said, in this country, you have seen people prosecuted of what they have posted. So there's no reason any court of government to come and say, now we should shut it to avoid that, because there's an enabling law and people have been prosecuted previously. So there is no reason as to what. If somebody does a crime on the internet, that's actually solid evidence for the government to move and prosecute them. It actually makes work easier for the government, as opposed to when somebody does something on the ground and you have to go investigate. This one, just get where this guy stays. And the lobby has talked about and other things which government, the communication authority, they are well able to actually detect where you posted from and where it is that you stay. They can actually come for you. So that is actually helps them to deal with crime.
And still on the same, because looking at why people are inciting, because it is something that has been raised by even election observers, that there has been a lot of propaganda and insightful messages. But unfortunately, we have not convicted any politician in regards to the same who is in jail, because looking at all the election cycles, in 92, remember in the Burnt Forest, in 97, in 2007, even if we have free elections, we are still having 1 or 2, 3, 4 pockets of violence, but we have never convicted any politicians. That is why perhaps we are having that runaway propaganda that is there, but we have the legal framework that is there to ensure that we prosecute these people, but we haven't done that, and the law is there.
What I can tell you is the fact that government has realized that internet is the best thing. If we go back to 2007, Kenya was one of the countries which used social media to actually track and help people who are in the violence-prone sites. And that evidence went all the way to the ICC. It's actually what was relied on to prosecute the president and the deputy president and the other people. So that came in handy to actually to rescue people in the first place who were suffering. Secondly, it came as a very key component of evidence to go take people to the ICC. So if we are at that level, and Kenya was the first country to do that, so we can't be pioneers in some things in the world, and then we reach at an election and then we want to backtrack just because there's an election. Because we, for one, should be the people who are actually promoting this, that we need to use internet so that we can actually be able to go to the ground and be able to pin whoever it is that we want to pin. Because also trying for people who have maybe, for example, even with social media, somebody needs to take a video of people who are trying to burn somebody's house. In a village, you can be able to track these people. I mean, unless what of a situation whereby you find that a house has been burned, you have nothing of the sort. But provided that photo is posted, you have people to prosecute. So that is actually a plus. It helps us, and then we have the enabling laws to process these particular kinds of evidence. So I think the challenge our neighboring countries have, for example, Ethiopia has been a closed economy. Uganda has been closing down on social media issues because of the kind of regimes they have. DRC, I think, the same. So we cannot compare ourselves to that. So we actually at a vantage point to promote democracy, to promote use of social media in ensuring that we do not get in prosecuting crime and also promoting issues of how to actually expose or do fair elections. Yes.
Indeed. And let me first of all sample a few comments before we continue with this live discussion. We're also going to be looking at what some of the things that will be remembered. The head of state, President Uhuru Kenyatta, will be remembered. Ronald Koril, thank you for your good comment. You say good work. Kerry Ocheng is also watching from Facebook. That is Kelvin Mukovi, all the way from Masienze Ikolomani. Faith Jebet, you have issues with the IEBC. Muse Martin, you're talking about... Okay. Habari Asubuhi, Mark the Prince. Of course, there's several of them. We do thank you for your comment, but let's have that break. Let's have a break, and then we'll come back to discuss further. Also looking at some of the challenges the country still is going through. We have drought. Back to election preparedness.
Yes, back to election.
And we were looking at the freedoms that we are supposed to enjoy as Kenyans.
Yes.
Despite the numerous challenges. Kenya being one of the best in terms of internet connection in Africa, and perhaps in the world, as Wakili noted. There are some rights that are enshrined in law, and we should jealously protect them.
Yes.
Wrap it up.
Yes. First, I do not understand why someone would be afraid that the internet is going to be switched off.
I think NCAC are the ones who just made it blow out of proportion.
You know, someone said some time back from the other side of Kenya Kwanza, they said, well, they are planning to rig an election, and one of the things they are going to do is that they are going to shut down the internet. Yeah. So I want to believe it started from there. I am happy to see it to be sandwiched between two lawyers. We all know there is no perfect crime. And so if you're planning to rig, make it look as perfect as possible. And so if you switch off the internet, then that says there's something that happened. If I'm planning to rig an election, if I knew how an election is rigged, I would want to make sure that internet is on, so that I can do whatever I am doing. You don't have to bring all these major red flags that people say, on that day you switched off the internet, you did what? And again, if you're afraid that the people you think are going to rig the election are planning that, internet is just a platform of communication. There are other ways of communications. Capitalize on them. I want to believe from where I am seated that every politician will have their tallying center. You know, not the ABC one. They will set up somewhere like an office so that your agents will transmit the results from their polling stations as they conclude. And so there is the use of USDD, you know, USSD. Yeah, there is that. You can capitalize on that. I saw the other day you can buy phone numbers. There's an application you buy. I can have an American number. I can buy internet from America. And so those are some of the things you need to prepare yourself, just in case you think this person is going to rig election through this means. And so that is why we are telling Kenyans that rigging of an election is the hardest thing, and so everybody needs to be as comfortable as possible. Just go do your work. But just also the problem is, if you're a politician, uende ulalie masikio pale, you need to send your loyalists as your agents, people who cannot be compromised, because he brought out something important, that you can compromise people. But again, how many people can you compromise in the process? Who has that capacity? Where do you even get the time to convince everybody in that room? Where do you get the guts to convince an American to rig in your favor as an observer? And so we need to tell people, we need to trust our institutions also, and also be at peace that we are coming of age. Some things you know cannot be done as we used to do, like in 1970s. Stories are told.
Let's now finish up with the courts, so that we may look at some of the projects that are key and will be underlining or underscoring the legacy of President Uhuru Kenyatta. At the courts, we had the issue of Reuben Kigame, who the court instructed he be included, but IEBC appealed, and one of the reasons is that they said that the timelines are quite tight. So what are the legal redress? Because if it was me, I would challenge the election after it is concluded and say, my rights were violated because I was not included, and I'm quite sure I would have been the next Kenya president. Is that a possible scenario?
Well, just to respond comprehensively to that concern, I believe we should have some recourse or a reflection of the judgment from the Supreme Court following the dispute, of course, concerning the degree or qualifications of the governor of Wajir County. The current governor of Wajir, His Excellency Mohamed Mohamud. Now, you remember when the dispute got to the Supreme Court set some parameters. The Supreme Court, number one, gave an interpretation of Article 88, 4E of the Constitution, in a way that it attempted to set it into operation, so that disputes that are predominantly pre-election disputes, the Supreme Court said that in view of Article 81 of the Constitution, then pre-election disputes must be handled by the IEBC as the court of the first instance or the political parties dispute tribunal. Then any appeals arising from decisions made by the IEBC or the political parties dispute tribunals must be heard and determined through the hierarchy of courts before the election date, so that we should not have, in the wisdom of the Supreme Court during that time, and this is the jurisprudence or the law currently, is that we should not have pre-election disputes going past, or rather still lacking in our court corridors past the 9th day of August 2022. So this is to tell us that what is transpiring right now is actually an affront or in contempt brags and content of the Supreme Court decision, so that we expect, ordinarily, as a black letter lawyer, I expect that Ruben Kagame's, dispute on his Kigame's dispute on his qualification, so that he can participate or not participate in the presidential race, should have been determined or should be determined before the 9th day of August. And so this essentially means that the Court of Appeal and the Supreme Court, where these disputes might find themselves there, that they should ban the midnight oil. We should have that dispute determined before then, so that it can allow the IBC to participate in the elections. Now, the situation that we might likely, encounter is this. Ruben might win probably in the Court of Appeal or the Supreme Court. Then it will be long after the elections have taken place. So what will that win mean? Of course, I understand the principles of law, but that win will be moot. The question will be moot. It will have been overtaken by events.
Yes.
The court will not even have anything to determine. But now we'll be having violation of the rights of this individual, Ruben, to participate in an election, having been violated by the courts themselves. So what recourse does he have? Because we cannot have a repeat of the election. Because one person was locked out of the elections. Now, you asked the question. You responded by saying that he could be compensated. Of course, I understand. The law, if you look at Article 22 and 23 of the Constitution, it proposes that compensation is also a way in which we can redress a violation of your right. But on the question, there is some good jurisprudence on the question of compensation. I cannot slap you and then compensate you. We cannot allow such a situation. We cannot allow a situation where people unashamedly violate other people's rights. They look down upon the jurisprudence that has been set by the Supreme Court to ensure that these rights, the political rights of this individual, is enjoyed to the maximum as is required by law. So even if you will say that he will get compensation, and if at all, if the question of compensation will ever arise, then it means he needs to return back to the High Court for the High Court to determine the question of compensation, because you cannot be determining compensation at the Court of Appeal or the appellate courts.
He has to come back to the High Court.
You need to come back, and you saw it even in Gitobi Manyara's case, where his press company was burned down by the former government during the Moise regime. And when they got to the Supreme Court, after finding or establishing that there was violation of their rights, either as press owners and as individuals who own these press companies, but by the Moise regime, then the court returned that question for compensation back to the High Court. Now, what does it mean to this individual? It is a sad state of affair, if you ask me. I think we still have Friday. We have today, we have Saturday, we have Sunday, we have even Monday.
But that counsel means that the Court of Appeal and the Supreme Court must hear and determine that before Tuesday. And if at all the ballot papers are all here, that means that it's a gone case. But away from that, perhaps this brings the question of the Kriegler report, which said at least try by a year to election, you have already sorted all the challenges that could arise in the same, because we could have addressed some of the cases that we are seeing now, because the court is pronouncing this, but unfortunately this cannot be done.
I think I tend to agree with what said Shadrack, because it's a very sad state of affair for Ruben Kigame. I'm a fan of his music. Being a gospel musician, he's been churning out tunes which are very interesting. But then, and also, even actually on a constitutional basis as Kenyans, it could have been good for him to be in the for the people with disabilities, to cover that particular wing. That not being the case, we need to prepare. As you have said, the Kriegler report was very clear, but Kenyans are not sticklers for what it is that has been set forth. And it's not a challenge. The challenge was not brought by IBC per se. You see, Chebukati has been out there saying we need to prepare for this thing. But Chebukati cannot prepare for these things without money. There's the parliament which was supposed to actually pass the budget to allow him to set things in motion. They never did. They just did it the last minute. So if he had been given the resources a year ago, the way the Kriegler report had opted that it should be done, we shouldn't have been having these challenges. It should have been sensitizing people. There's also a very important thing which we also overlook, that this IBC is supposed to be doing sensitization, civic education, but they have never been given money for this. So they only engage in this at the last minute. They do some few adverts here and there, and some of the work is actually done by the politicians for them because of the challenge of money. So
Willy,
yes.
Waswahili wanasema mgala muwe na haki umpe. Of course, corruption has been one of the key detriments of the government, of Jubilee government, since they took over office. And a lot has been said, high cost of living, a lot has been said. But President Uhuru Kenyatta has really made the youth and the women really stand out. What are some of the things that he will be remembered? And especially this, because I'm talking about a president who has overseen the establishment of so many schools and learning institutions and entrusted. Yes, I will say that the youth have not really come out quite clear as we should, because the youth are the majority of the population. But looking at some of the positions that the youths are now holding, and women for that matter, and my wakilis here can attest to that at the judiciary, because all the leadership actually has been taken by very competent women.
First, allow me to correct you that Jubilee government is not as corrupt in its second term as it was in the first term. Actually, the second term corruption has drastically gone down. And I will tell you why. You see, there was a very big disconnect between the president and his deputy. They both had interests, okay? The deputy president had his political interest so that he may be the people's favorite when it comes to this election as it is today. But again, the president had a legacy to leave. Legacy means you have to work for people. So, so these were conflicting interests. William Ruto, his deputy, wanted to emerge as the most favorite. Okay, and the president wanted to come out as the guy who has worked way better than his predecessors. And so the issue of corruption came in. So for you to work, there were so many loopholes of corruption. Okay, so he had to make sure that he has sealed the loopholes of corruption, so that now this money goes to development. Okay, and that is why you have seen so many development. Actually, Kenya is said to be a construction site for the last 5 years. That is President Uhuru's last term. If you look at the issue of development, it's all about money. Where is this money coming from? One, President Uhuru is one of the president. He is actually the only president who has corrected revenue of close to 2 trillion just this year. He has, that means that business has been thriving. You see, revenue comes from businesses.
Okay, because of the interest of time, we'll go down as some of his major milestone, and mostly in terms of his leadership.
I think I took a longer route so that
we have less than 10 minutes.
No, but in the interest of time, allow me to say that President Uhuru will go down as a very peaceful president. His 10 years tenure will be classified with the word peace. Number two, we have seen development like we have never seen. He has tripled his construction of economic enablers more than Kibaki. Economic enablers being the hardware economy, where now the business and the economic software lies on. You know, when you collect 2 trillion, it means that these new businesses and small businesses have grown into big businesses or medium businesses. So some work had to be done for these businesses to give that kind of revenue. And so he has been able to collect so much money from businesses that he has created from the kind of constructions that he has been doing in this country. And so he has prepared the next government to get into something we will call the economic revolution, where now businesses go to the next level because of the work that he has done. And so for me, I will say Uhuru goes down as one of the best presidents we have seen. His work will be seen 5 years from now.
Wakili, you hold the same view in terms of his leadership. There are so many things that he has been able to accomplish. Some are still not yet done, but perhaps the next president will pick up from there. But what would you say about his leadership?
I mean, I might not be able to speak with a lot of conviction as my counterpart here has spoken. It's the truth.
It's his views?
Yes, it is his views. I mean, he speaks with a lot of energy.
Yes.
I feel shy speaking after he has spoken. But what is important is this. Of course, appreciating that Mugala Mu and Haki Mpe.
No.
I think President Kenyatta has also done a commendable job, especially in giving us some of these, amenities like the expressway. I have enjoyed it, and I know for a fact that sometimes it will take me 40 minutes from Mombasa or 45 minutes from Mombasa, and then from Nyayo Stadium or somewhere there in Cabanas, I will spend like 2 hours to get to town. So really, I think that is a plus. He has done so much in ensuring that we have road as an infrastructure that is an enabler, so that we can do business. Right now, you drive from here to town, you will take to the airport, you will take approximately 6-5 minutes. It helps you.
Basically, you're saying he has enabled the economy.
Yes, he has enabled the economy.
Yeah.
And,
because of time, kindly let's allow Gibson to wrap it up.
I think for me, what I think where, in my own assessment, the president has done so well is on the international front. Those trips he has been making, there have been so many. And then the reputation of Kenya as a country in the international front, he has done a huge task there. He has been president of the Caribbean, the African Caribbean thing, and then, we have been fighting for Amina Mohammed to go to wherever it is, and those things which
and
put us in the forefront. That has done a fantastic job. And the UN Security Council now. Those are some of the things which give us, I always tell people that when I see Uhuru speaking at international forums, I'm always sure I have a president. I'm not so sure when he does in Kenya. But on the local front, there are some misses. Let me talk of the misses. The issue of justice, law and order, that one is a miss, a serious miss. Had he just mixed that plus what Willy is talking with a lot of conviction, though I can also not speak in the same wavelength, we could have qualified what Willy has said, that he was very successful. But infrastructure-wise, he's done something. I've gone to very far-flung areas in this country, and you can find a tarmac, which was not existing. So that we have to give it to him, plus the expressway which Shadrack has talked about, very interesting infrastructure. And then, of course, what he's going to launch today, the Makupa Bridge, is very important. If you've been to Mombasa, I actually tell people of Mombasa, you should not be cursing the president whatsoever, because most of the projects I've seen in Mombasa of development is in Mombasa. Mombasa has really changed. And of course, Nairobi now with the expressway, we can give it to him that and the bypasses which have been done. So he's done quite something.
Indeed. And let me say something that I can attest to. The Miraa business, of course, coming from a Miraa region and having bigger for
recently,
myself,
yes.
I can tell you that I can attest to that. And also the East Africa community. He midwifed, for lack of a better word, midwifed the absorption of DRC. That's a 100 million people market that I'm quite sure I'll be seeing you practicing there for some big cases there.
And even given us an opportunity to practice in Uganda or Tanzania.
It is coming.
Our colleagues in Uganda and Tanzania, they practice
here.
We actually made practice in Congo earlier than Uganda or Tanzania.
All right, indeed. As we said, Mgala Muena Haki Umpe. Thank you so much indeed for watching. We were looking at election preparedness and the countdown itself is just 4 days to the general polls. Remember, the campaigns conclude on Saturday. They have organized mega rallies in Nairobi and other parts. And also we are also following keenly on the Commonwealth Games, Omanyala, making us quite proud. We are also following up on the election countdown in all the 4 candidates. Wherever they are going, we will be keen to ensure you are updated. And of course, the daily IEBC press conference to just give us a feel of where we are in terms of election. Thank you so much. I'm quite sure you are going to be seeing these guys with their insightful comments and suggestions very, very soon when we analyze elections. So keep it KBC. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Bentro Njue. Let's continue this conversation on social media. Thanks for watching.
Thank you for having me.